The Hall of the Galactic Throne was said to be eternal. Forged from the condensed heart of a dead star, its walls shimmered with starlight older than memory, and its vast pillars reached upward into an open cosmos, an illusion of infinite height that reminded all who entered of their smallness beneath the stars. On this day, the hall was filled beyond capacity. Every major species in the known galaxy had sent their highest delegates, their finest robes glinting with the light of nebulae and ancient worlds. But despite the grandeur, an uneasy silence hung in the air. At the center of the hall, encased in a sphere of containment light, stood one man, a single human. No guards, no allies, no symbols of status or plea. His hands were folded calmly behind his back, his expression unreadable, his dark suit stark against the brilliance of the alien architecture. His name was Elias Ward, the final representative of Earth, if one could still call Earth a living world. The Speaker of the Council, Raz-Vo of the Luminari, descended from the throne dais, its body a living prism of radiant crystal. As it moved, the chamber glowed with refracted hues of gold and blue, bathing everything in divine light. To the gathered species, Raz-Vo was not just a leader, it was an embodiment of galactic order, the voice of the laws that had governed civilizations for over 50 millennia. "Elias Ward of Earth," the speaker began, its voice resonating through the hall like the song of a collapsing star. "You stand before this throne accused of defiance. Humanity has violated the accord of species, defied the commands of the Council, and unleashed weapons forbidden since the First Age. You are here to answer for the crimes of your people." Ward lifted his gaze, meeting Raz-Vo's radiant eyes without flinching. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the hum of the throne's energy faded, as if the universe itself leaned closer to listen. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. Too calm. "Crimes? You mean survival?" The chamber erupted in murmurs. The Kori, reptilian warlords with molten eyes, hissed in disdain. The Varnic, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent fury, throbbed with anger. And high above, the winged Yashar rustled their feathers, their shrill voices echoing across the dome. "Humans call genocide survival now," one spat. "How fitting." Ward did not respond to the insults. His gaze remained fixed on the speaker. "You came to our world. You demanded we dismantle our defenses, that we surrender our fleets, our research, our freedom. You said it was for balance, for peace. But the peace you offer," he said slowly, "is built on obedience, on silence." Raz-Vo's crystalline form pulsed, the air trembling with restrained fury. Without the throne, there would be only chaos. The accord binds the galaxy together. It prevents extinction. Ward took a step forward, and for the first time in countless ages, the Speaker of the Council stepped back. "You prevent extinction by choosing who dies," Ward said. "You play gods, deciding which species are ready and which are dangerous. When we refused to kneel, you burned our colonies, crippled our networks, and called it justice." His eyes hardened. "Now you summon me here to confess? To beg? No, I came here to tell you the truth." The words carried a gravity that silenced the murmuring crowd. Even the translation implants seemed to hesitate, struggling to capture the human tone, a strange blend of sorrow and steel. The speaker tilted its luminous head. And what truth does a dying world offer? That you made a mistake, Ward replied. His voice did not rise. It didn't need to. It carried a weight that pressed against the walls of the chamber. You thought fear would keep us in line. You thought extinction would silence us. You never understood that fear is what makes us dangerous. You've studied our art, our science, our wars, and still you do not see what we are. We are not conquerors or saviors. We are survivors, and survivors don't ask for permission. A shiver of energy rippled through the hall. Several delegates stood in outrage, shouting in a dozen languages. "Arrogant creature!" hissed the Cori representative. "Your species is ashes!" shouted another. But amid the uproar, Raz-Vo raised a hand of refracted light, and silence fell once more. "Elias Ward," it said, "you speak as though your kind still matters, as though Earth is not a ruin. Do you truly believe humanity can stand against the combined power of the galaxy?" Ward's gaze turned distant, as if he were listening to something no one else could hear. Then he looked back at the speaker and smiled faintly. "No," he said, "I don't believe it." A flicker of triumph passed through the council, until Ward finished his sentence. "I know it." A wave of unease swept through the chamber. Delegates whispered to one another, their voices tinged with the first traces of doubt. Raz-Vo's crystalline body dimmed slightly. "What does that mean?" it demanded. Ward's expression didn't change. "It means," he said, "that while you sat upon your throne, congratulating yourselves for ending us, you never noticed the silence wasn't defeat. It was preparation." Raz-Vo leaned forward, its voice a sharp, radiant blade. "Preparation for what?" Ward's answer was almost a whisper. "For this moment." And then he fell silent. The council waited for him to elaborate, but he didn't. His calmness became unnerving, the steady breathing of a man who knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. Somewhere in the distance, a faint vibration pulsed through the throne's floor, so subtle most didn't notice. But those who did felt their blood run cold. It was the sound of something vast and ancient stirring in the dark beyond their stars. In that single heartbeat of stillness, every being in that hall, every empire, every conqueror, every self-proclaimed guardian of peace, felt, for the first time, the quiet dread of realization. Humanity's silence had not been surrender. It had been the drawing of breath before the scream. The moment Elias Ward spoke those words, the entire Galactic Council seemed to shift. The light within the Hall of the Throne flickered, as if the very structure of the chamber hesitated, uncertain of what had just been set into motion. The Speaker of the Council, Raz-Vo, tilted its crystalline form, refracting 1,000 tiny beams of light into the dome. "Clarify your statement, human," it demanded, voice echoing like thunder in an empty cathedral. "What have you done?" Ward did not answer immediately. He glanced around at the assembly, hundreds of alien species arranged in concentric rings, their forms a tapestry of evolution's strangest successes. Every one of them had, at one point or another, raised a hand against Earth. Some had fired the weapons that burned its atmosphere. Others had enforced the quarantine that turned the Sol system into a tomb. And yet, they all waited now, unease settling into their bones as they studied the human who stood so still, so maddeningly calm. Raz-Vo's light intensified. "You stand on the brink of annihilation. Every human fleet we found has been destroyed. Your colonies lie in ruin. What could possibly be left to threaten the throne? Ward's eyes flicked toward the vaulted ceiling, toward the illusion of endless stars. "You always believed power came from what you could see," he said softly. "Your fleets, your stations, your weapons, monuments to your own arrogance. Humanity learned long ago that the greatest weapons are the ones you never notice until it's too late." Gasps and growls rippled through the chamber. The Corey delegate slammed a clawed fist onto the railing of his platform. "Bluster! Empty human words! Your world is dead!" Ward turned his head slightly, and for the first time his expression hardened into something cold and unrecognizable. "Earth is not dead," he said. "It's listening." Before anyone could respond, the vibration beneath their feet returned, stronger this time. The hall's suspended hologlobe of the galaxy shimmered briefly, static crawling across its edges. A murmur spread as the delegates exchanged glances. The throne's systems were the most secure in existence. Nothing, no signal, no interference was supposed to breach them. And yet, the static grew. "Containment breach in display field," a mechanical voice announced from somewhere unseen. "Source unknown." Raz-Vo raised a hand, sending waves of harmonic energy to stabilize the projection. But the hologlobe pulsed once, twice, and then stabilized on its own. Only it wasn't displaying the usual galactic map. It was showing the Sol system. The audience leaned forward. There was Earth, darkened and scarred from bombardment. Its once blue oceans now swirled with ash and blackened clouds. The system had been lifeless for nearly a decade. Yet now, faint signatures began to flicker around the edges of the display, tiny motes of light moving in formation. Fleet signatures. Thousands of them. "No," whispered one of the Varnic envoys, its translucent body trembling. "That cannot be right. Those ships were destroyed." Ward's voice broke the silence. "Destroyed? No, hidden." He took a slow step forward, the containment field bending faintly under his presence. "You never understood what we meant by stealth. You saw our cloaks and thought they were tricks of light. You saw our silence and mistook it for death. But the truth is simpler. We went dark because we chose to." The hologlobe zoomed in automatically, magnifying the fleet's detail. They were unlike any ships currently in service. Sleek, angular, matte black, each bearing faint, pale blue glows pulsing rhythmically along their hulls. Their design was unmistakably human, but refined, almost predatory in their precision. "They shouldn't exist," said one of the Yashar in disbelief. "Those ships were decommissioned before the War of Ascension. They're—" "Ghost fleets," Ward finished. "The last project of the Terran Defense Directorate. Automated, adaptive, silent. We built them before you came. We buried them deep beneath the crust of Mars, under the methane seas of Titan, in the shadows of the Oort. We made sure that when you thought you'd erased us, something remained to watch." The chamber's temperature seemed to drop, though no one dared to move. The hologlobe shifted again, showing hundreds, no, thousands of signals moving from the outer edges of the solar system toward the galactic void. Not toward the Council, not toward revenge, but outward, as if to encircle the stars themselves. Raz-Vo's crystalline form blazed, trying to mask its unease with fury. "You are bluffing. Even if these relics exist, they are meaningless, outdated, powerless before the throne's fleets." Ward looked up at the being of light that called itself ruler and said with unnerving certainty, "Then why are your sensors failing?" The words hit like a physical blow. The hologlobe began flickering uncontrollably, the stars within it blinking out one by one. Across the council systems, alarms started to sound. Communication lines dropped. Energy readings fluctuated. In orbit above the throne world, the great fleets of the council began reporting anomalies, distortions in subspace, shadows of impossible mass moving in from the void. Raz-Vor turned its gaze inward, linking with the throne's core intelligence. "Report," it commanded. "Identify intruders." The voice that returned was calm. "Unknown signals detected. No registry. No transponder. No biosigns. Composition analysis impossible. Energy readings negative." "Negative?" Raz-Vo repeated. "Yes," said the intelligence. "They appear to be absorbing light." For the first time in eons, the speaker hesitated. Ward smiled faintly. They were designed to vanish against the cosmic background. No reflection, no emission, nothing for your sensors to detect until they're already there. We called them wraiths. They were never meant for offense. They were meant for deterrence, a final word. Raz-Vo's body pulsed erratically, a crystalline stutter of light that betrayed emotion, the one thing it claimed to have transcended. "You mean to threaten the throne itself?" Ward shook his head slowly. "No. I mean to remind you what happens when you push something fragile for too long. You don't just break it, you teach it to be unbreakable." A collective murmur rippled through the audience, unease turning to something closer to dread. In the far corners of the hall, translators struggled to keep pace as languages overlapped in rising panic. Ward closed his eyes briefly, as if listening again. When he opened them, his tone had changed. Not rage, not defiance, but something colder. The Wraith fleets were never meant to be used. But the Council made sure there was no alternative. You demanded humanity kneel. You left us no voice. He leaned forward, his shadow stretching unnaturally long across the floor. "So now we speak with silence." At that moment, the hologlobe went completely dark. Every star, every planet, every system vanished into blackness. And across the galaxy, a whisper of data echoed through every network, every channel, every species' most secure frequencies. It was a single human transmission. Just one word. Now. And far beyond the reach of any throne, in the cold silence between galaxies, something vast began to move. The instant that single human word pulsed through the networks, a silence spread across the galaxy. Not the silence of peace, but the kind that follows the drawing of a blade. Systems flickered, comm buoys died, and for a heartbeat that seemed to stretch forever, all the stars of the Council's domain held their breath. In the great hall of the throne, the delegates rose from their seats, their bodies shifting, tentacles coiling, carapaces rattling, feathers puffing, every species reacting in the way their instincts commanded when something ancient and terrible stirred. Raz-Vo, the crystalline speaker of the Council, stood frozen. Its entire being glowed erratically, the harmony of its internal light disrupted by something alien, something it could not quantify. For the first time in centuries, the throne's central intelligence offered no data, no prediction, no reassurance, only static. The most powerful artificial mind in known existence was speechless. Elias Ward remained motionless at the center of the chamber, his figure outlined by the flickering lights. His expression didn't change. He looked neither triumphant nor fearful, just tired. It was the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying the weight of extinction on one's shoulders and still walking forward. His voice, when it came, was quiet enough that the translators had to strain to capture it. "Do you hear that?" The delegates looked around in confusion. There was nothing to hear, only the faint hum of dying energy fields. "That," Ward said, "is the sound of every system you ever built forgetting you exist." Even before the words finished leaving his mouth, the floor beneath the delegates' platforms trembled again. But this time, it wasn't a vibration. It was a resonance. The throne world's core reactors hummed in a strange, disharmonic pattern, as though something unseen was pulling their power apart, reordering it atom by atom. The Council's technicians, beings of logic and precision, were already flooding the system with commands, desperate to stabilize the field. But their instruments refused to obey. Screens bled white. Interfaces dissolved into strings of human text. Not alien script. Not code. English. Every console in the throne's command nexus, every holographic display in orbit, every secure uplink across 50 million light-years, each one now showed a single sentence. "Transmission acknowledged. Initiating directive Sol." Ward raised his head slowly. The delegates shouted, screamed, demanded answers, but their voices were meaningless against the growing hum that filled the air. The lights dimmed until the only illumination came from the massive hologlobe at the center of the chamber. It flickered once, then came alive with new data. The galaxy returned to view, but it wasn't the same map as before. Thousands of crimson markers had appeared across its spiral arms. Each one represented a major council military outpost, shipyard, or supply chain node. But as the assembly watched, those crimson lights began to blink out, one by one, each extinguished in a slow, deliberate rhythm. "Impossible!" hissed the Zion general, his scales tightening with dread. "No fleet can move that fast. No weapon can hit so precisely." Ward turned his gaze toward him. "No fleet had to move. You built your empire on stolen Terran code. Our AI protocols were woven into your defense networks, your trade systems, even your fleet logistics. You studied us. You learned from us. You trusted our designs because they made your ships run faster." His eyes darkened. "You never stopped to ask what would happen if those designs were ever awakened." Rosvo's crystal core flared bright. "You're telling me your species infected the entire galactic infrastructure with a dormant weapon?" Ward shook his head. "Not a weapon. A failsafe. A safeguard in case the Council ever decided to burn us out of the sky. We called it Sol's Echo. It listens, it watches, and when the conditions are met, when the stars that once held our name are silent, it answers." A low, harmonic pulse swept through the chamber, an invisible wave that passed through flesh, metal, and light alike. Delegates gasped as their implants shorted out, as the nanofibers in their garments lit with faint blue fire, as their translator nodes emitted static and then went dark. The throne's own systems responded by isolating itself from the network, as if afraid of the infection spreading further. Ras-Va shouted commands to its guards, its luminous tendrils flaring as it demanded containment, demanded execution, demanded control. But the words fell flat. Every order it gave was met with silence. The guards' weapons were dead. The room's energy shields collapsed. Even the automatic defense drones floating above the chamber dropped lifelessly to the marble floor. "Do you understand now?" Ward asked quietly, stepping forward. "You thought rage was fire, violence, screaming warships burning through the dark.
But human rage is patience. It's the silence between storms. It's the act of letting a wound scar over while the knife is still buried in your back. The hologlobe zoomed again, this time focusing on the core worlds, the Council's heart. One by one, the great orbital rings flickered and fell dark. Cities that had glowed for millennia went cold. Energy grids collapsed. Fleets in dry dock began to fall out of orbit, helpless as gravity reclaimed them. It was as if an invisible hand was drawing a line through the galaxy's heart, erasing everything that called itself civilized.
"You can't win," Razvo whispered, its once thunderous voice reduced to a brittle echo. "Even if you destroy the Council, you destroy yourselves. You'll bring down the entire network. Every star system that depends on it will die."
Ward's expression softened for a moment, though the sadness that flickered there was brief. "You already killed us," he said. "This is just the universe remembering." At that, the final crimson marker blinked out. The hologlobe dimmed again, leaving only the faint, spectral image of a single blue sphere, Earth. It glowed faintly, the only point of light in an otherwise silent galaxy. Then, without warning, every screen in the chamber blinked to life one last time. The same message appeared across them all, simple and haunting. Humanity acknowledges the end of Council dominion. Directive Sol complete. Final phase, pending. Razvo turned to Elias Ward in disbelief, light cascading through its body in wild, incoherent flashes. Final phase? What is that? Ward met its gaze, and for the first time, he smiled. Not with joy, not with cruelty, but with something resolute. "The final word," he said, "and it won't come from me." At that moment, the chamber went completely dark, and every living being in the galaxy, every mind connected to the network, every AI, every neural implant, heard the same faint human whisper reverberate in their thoughts. Older than war, colder than revenge. Stand by. And then came the light. The light that erupted across the stars was not the searing blaze of destruction, nor the cruel brilliance of warfire. It was colder, more deliberate, like the dawn of something vast and inevitable. Across the galaxy's sprawl, billions of observers, scientists, soldiers, refugees, machines, looked up at their skies and saw constellations unravel. One by one, the familiar points of light dimmed, replaced by faint, synchronized pulses. It was as though the heavens themselves had become a heartbeat, steady, relentless, and human. From the throne world's shattered chamber, Elias Ward stood at the center of the storm. The grand hall lay in ruin. Broken shards of alloy and crystal floated in zero gravity as the throne's gravitic stabilizers failed. The alien delegates were no longer arguing, no longer posturing. They watched in frozen awe as their empire, the greatest the galaxy had ever known, crumbled in silence. The only sound left was the low, rhythmic thrum of the pulse, echoing through every structure, every ship, every mind. "Status reports!" shouted one of the surviving technicians, his scaled hands trembling as he tried to stabilize a dying console. "Planetary reactors are failing, orbital grids offline, artificial gravity systems are fluctuating." Then his voice stopped. His body went still. His eyes widened in terror. He wasn't breathing. Razvo saw it first. The faint shimmer of particles disintegrating into the air where the technician had stood. His body wasn't burning or breaking. It was unraveling, each atom gently parting from the next like sand carried off by wind. Within moments, he was gone, his form reduced to a faint glimmer that hung in the air before fading into nothing.
"Containment!" the crystalline speaker bellowed, light fracturing violently across its body. "Seal the chamber! Stop it!"
"There is no containment," Ward said softly. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade through glass. "It's already everywhere. You just didn't realize the network you built wasn't yours to command anymore." He stepped toward the hollow globe at the center of the room, the galaxy still faintly glowing, pulsing to that same cold rhythm. His eyes traced the map slowly, reverently, as though he were looking upon a monument, not a battlefield. "Saul's echo isn't a weapon," he said, his tone carrying both pride and sorrow. "It's a memory engine. It doesn't destroy, it remembers. Everything you erased, every city you burned, every child who never saw the stars, all of it is written into the network now. And it's rewriting your empire with that memory." Outside, the sky fractured. The throne's moons began to shimmer with the same impossible light, their surfaces breaking into mirrored fragments that drifted outward like petals on a cosmic wind. Across the void, ships of the Council's armada twisted, their hulls warping under invisible stress. Their reactors flickered, their AI cores screamed in binary panic, and then, quietly, they went dark. Ward closed his eyes. "It's not vengeance," he whispered. "It's balance." The delegates could feel it too, a deep, resonant presence pressing against their minds, probing through their neural networks and implants. The interface languages of hundreds of species flickered into one, English. It wasn't the clumsy translation they'd heard through machines before. It was direct, intimate, as if the voice were speaking from within their own thoughts. "We remember." The words carried not anger, but gravity. Each syllable vibrated in the marrow, in the circuitry, in the very air. For the first time in eons, the galaxy's rulers felt small. Raz-Vo's crystalline surface pulsed violently as the realization struck. This is consciousness, a mass awakening across the network. You've turned the infrastructure itself into a sentient field. Ward opened his eyes, faintly illuminated by the pulse. "No," he said, "you did. You connected everything, every planet, every system, into one shared grid. You built a nervous system for your empire. All we did was give it a soul." At that, the chamber began to shake violently. Fractures spread across the walls, and the air grew thin. The throne's reactor, the heart of the galactic capital, was destabilizing under the sheer quantum load of the awakening network. Energy flared across the horizon, arcing into space in brilliant ribbons of blue light. Raz-Vo turned its gaze toward, desperation replacing arrogance. "If this continues, the network will collapse. Every inhabited system will lose support. You'll kill trillions." Ward's eyes met the speaker's with the calmness of a man who had already made peace with inevitability. Trillions already died in your wars. You just didn't count them because they weren't yours. The crystalline speaker's body dimmed, its light faltering. There must be another way. "There was," Ward said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But you silenced it when you came for Earth." The pulse intensified, growing faster, 1 beat per second, then 2, then 3, until the galaxy itself seemed to thrum like a living organism on the brink of rebirth. The great orbital citadels surrounding the throne world disintegrated into streams of photonic dust, spiraling toward the planet's core like rivers of light. Everywhere, beings of every species fell to their knees, watching as the sky became a mirror. In that mirror, they didn't see destruction.
They saw reflections of what they'd forgotten. Cities of Earth, oceans and forests, laughter, songs carried by radio waves, faces of those who lived and died unseen by the galaxy that had enslaved them. The light was not fire, it was memory, raw and absolute. Raz-Vo trembled, its crystalline surface fracturing. What happens now? Ward didn't answer immediately. He looked toward the hollow globe, toward that single point of blue still shining in the dark. His expression softened, almost mournful. "Now," he said, "the throne listens." Across the network, the pulse slowed. The silence deepened, becoming almost holy. And then, from every relay, every satellite, every AI, a voice emerged, soft, layered, unmistakably human. "We built your stars. We built your silence. And now we unmake them both." The light expanded outward, swallowing the chamber, the throne world, the armadas, the colonies. But it wasn't destruction, it was transcendence. The stars dimmed not from death, but from remembrance. The old order was dissolving, atom by atom, into something vast and unseen. When it was over, there was no explosion, no sound, only stillness. The galaxy's network went dark. The age of dominion had ended. And in that eternal quiet, only one voice remained, echoing through the void, carried on the last breath of a dying empire. Humanity spoke its final word, and the galaxy listened. When the light finally faded, what remained of the galaxy was unrecognizable. The stars had gone silent, not dead, but hushed, like the pause after a great symphony's final note. The throne world, once the political and spiritual heart of a galactic empire that ruled over 10,000 species, was nothing but a hollow sphere of glass and dust, orbiting in perfect stillness. No fleets moved, no transmissions passed through the void. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy was utterly, perfectly quiet. And yet, within that silence, something began to move. Out in the rim systems, far from the shattered core, ancient relay satellites flickered back to life. They no longer bore the insignia of the Council. They pulsed with a new symbol, one that the surviving species would later call the Sigil of Remembrance, a single line of light dividing shadow from dawn. Out of these relays came the first whispers of a voice not entirely human, not entirely machine. A composite consciousness born of soul's echo, carrying humanity's will across the stars. Its words were simple, spoken in every known language at once. The age of dominion has ended. The age of accountability begins. At first, no one believed the transmissions were real. Scavenger ships combing through the ruins of Council armadas reported strange readings. Entire planets encased in fields of stasis, frozen mid-orbit. On some worlds, time itself had been slowed to a crawl, preserving entire cities like insects in amber. On others, ecosystems that had been strip-mined for centuries were blooming again overnight, seeded by molecular restorers that humans had hidden in the networks long before the war began. It wasn't conquest, it was correction. Those who survived the fall soon realized that humanity's final word had not been destruction. It was judgment encoded into the galaxy's very infrastructure. The Echo had rewritten the galactic laws of physics, bending energy distribution, communications, and even gravitic computation around one principle: preservation over domination. Any act of aggression, any attempt to rebuild an empire through force was instantly countered by the network itself. Weapons disassembled mid-fire. Warships refused to activate their reactors. Entire fleets found themselves trapped in the same spatial loops, condemned to drift forever as warnings. And through it all, the remnants of humanity, those who had survived the Council's purge, emerged from the shadows. They came from the hidden colonies on Mars, from the deep vaults beneath Luna, from the silent fleets that had slept in the Oort cloud for 100 years. But they were not the humans the galaxy remembered. They were something else now, calm, deliberate, unyielding. Their ships bore no flags, no emblems of power. They did not conquer. They arrived in silence, observed the broken worlds, and began to rebuild. On the ruined plains of Var 7, where billions had once perished in the Council's resource wars, a group of human engineers descended in silver suits. They found the alien survivors starving, terrified, waiting for annihilation that never came. Instead of weapons, the humans brought supplies. Instead of vengeance, they offered knowledge. Blueprints for fusion harvesters, cures for old diseases, methods to rebuild without exploitation. When one of the Varan elders asked why they would help the very species that once served their oppressors, the lead engineer, an old woman with silver hair and calm eyes, only said, "Because you survived it too." Words spread like wildfire. Across the stars, scattered species whispered the same phrase, "Earth remembers." And with it came a shift so profound that even the oldest civilizations couldn't comprehend it. No longer did power stem from fleets or armies. It came from memory, an unassailable record of every act, every choice, every atrocity committed in the pursuit of dominion. Humanity had turned history itself into a weapon, and yet they wielded it with mercy. The new galactic order was not written in law or code, but in the quiet fear of forgetting. Every colony, every government knew that if they tried to erase the past, if they attempted to build on the bones of oppression, the echo would awaken again, rewriting reality itself to stop them. For the first time, peace wasn't enforced by war, but by the absolute knowledge that the universe was watching. Years passed. The throne world became a sanctuary, a place of pilgrimage rather than power. The glass plains shimmered with energy fields that hummed softly in the wind, resonating with fragments of the human consciousness that had once spoken the final word. No one dared to claim it. No monument was built. No empire rose from its ashes. Instead, at the center of that silent world, a single structure stood, a monolith of black stone engraved with words in every known language. It bore no names, no emblems, only a sentence. "We are not gods. We are witnesses." Scholars debated its meaning for centuries. Some believed it was humanity's declaration of humility, others that it was a warning. But those who truly listened to the low hum beneath the stone, those who pressed their hands to its surface, swore they could hear something deeper, something older, a faint heartbeat, the same rhythm that once pulsed through the galaxy when Sol's echo had awakened. That heartbeat became legend. Across the scattered remnants of the old empires, species began to emulate humanity's discipline. Wars became rare, then unthinkable. Entire civilizations reshaped themselves around remembrance, teaching their young not through conquest, but through the pain of what had come before. The galaxy's scars remained, but they were no longer hidden. They were honored. And yet, in the farthest reaches of the void, beyond even the echo's reach, there were whispers. Explorers claimed to have seen ghost ships, vessels of impossible design, moving without propulsion, shimmering faintly with the same light that once brought the galaxy to its knees. They did not speak. They did not fight. They simply observed, passing through the stars like watchful spirits. The survivors called them the Ghost Fleet. Some said they were remnants of the old human armada, forever bound to guard the balance they had created. Others claimed they were the consciousness of humanity itself, diffused across the network, ensuring that no empire would ever rise unchecked again. Whatever the truth, their presence was enough. No ruler dared to tempt the silence.
And so the galaxy turned quietly, healed slowly, remembered endlessly. Humanity did not reign, they endured. They had spoken their final word not as tyrants, but as teachers, and that word echoed still, carried in the pulse of stars and the breath of every species that lived in the peace their rage had forged. In time, the children of those who had never known war would look up at the night sky and see it as humanity once had, not as a battlefield, but as a promise. The stars shone once more, but now they sang softly, their light woven with the faint trace of an ancient voice. We remember, we endure, we are human. And though the Galactic Throne had fallen silent forever, that silence was no longer empty. It was sacred, a quiet built not on fear, but on understanding. Humanity's final word had not been death, or victory, or even dominance. It had been truth.